Hey folks, here to record a vlog for you on Star vs. the Forces of Evil, episode 9, 10? I think 10. St. Olga's School for Wayward Princesses. Definitely an interesting episode. I've wanted to see what St. Olga's School is since practically the beginning of the show. It's more or less what I expected. A brainwashy prison for girls who dare to be anything other than standard Disney princesses. Which is definitely one of the tacks I wanted to take on it. This being a Disney show, I really enjoyed that the goal of the evil school was to turn them into... Excuse me. Got a bit of a nasal thing going on. The weather has been bouncing around like crazy, and I think my sinuses are responding in kind. It's definitely something that's interesting to me, because, even where Disney has pushed a little on the boundaries of their princess line in the last 20 years, with characters who are a little more, who kind of push against the Sleeping Beauty, Snow White kind of passive princess thing. Where you get, for example, Ariel is basically an anthropologist. Jasmine sneaks out to have adventures. Elsa unleashes the terrifying fury of the elements. So on and so forth. But even there's still, with Elsa pushing the hardest against it, there's still quote-unquote good girls. There's still, ultimately demure and well-behaved and all those other things that kids really just shouldn't ever be. And so it entertains me that that's set up as the goal of the villains, that the villain is in fact someone who has done this to herself. Is that character's name Olga? Or is it I'm blanking on her name, but the person who runs the school, I don't think she's Olga. But regardless, she herself clearly is someone, she puts herself through the brainwashing process, which, yes, I see you, Clockwork Orange reference. That is the obvious place to go, because that's exactly what Clockwork Orange is about. Crushing the life and individuality out of someone with this horrifying brainwashing process. And that works pretty well as a metaphor for school. I did pretty well by the standard school system. I was good at it. I came out all right. I learned a lot. But it's very clearly not for everyone. It's excessively regimented. It tries to push people into cookie cutters. I was lucky enough to go to some of the best public schools on the continent. A mile or two away from where I grew up, there were kids going to schools that were pretty much what the term school-to-prison pipeline was made up for. These were schools that actually people driving by would think they were prisons because they had walls and barbed wire and metal detectors at the entrances and, armed security guards in uniforms that made them look like cops. And, they were essentially prisons. Not an environment you want to put kids in unless you want them to grow up to be criminals. Which, of course, is the point of those particular schools. Assume that people are going to grow up to be criminals, treat them like they're going to grow up to be criminals, and hey, surprise, surprise, a lot of them grow up to be criminals. Meanwhile, you've got schools like St. Olga's, not quite that extreme, but you've got schools for rich kids that teach them to, be rich assholes. Sometimes it's the school itself and the way it's structured. Sometimes it's quote-unquote traditions, hazing, that kind of thing. Secret societies, fraternities, all that kind of stuff. It's an entire system designed to teach people their role in society, and it teaches different roles to different people. But it's still got the fundamental underlying problem of people being shoved into roles. But some people like that. They're afraid of having a life that isn't regimented. They need a life where decisions are made for them because they're afraid of making the wrong decisions. And I think that's where you get people like the headmistress of school who willingly brainwashes herself because she's afraid to have a choice, because she's afraid to make the wrong one. She's afraid of what will happen to her if she makes the wrong choices. Because she believes that there is one right choice, and that you have to make that one right choice, and if you don't, bad things happen to you. Which is, generally speaking, not how life works at all. There are generally lots of wrong choices, but also lots of equally right ones. And, generally speaking, you don't have to fill a role. Or at least, there's so many possible roles left unfilled that you can take one. Whichever one you want. Not easily. And it's made deliberately harder. We have countless systems in place designed so that, to sort people into hierarchies and make life difficult for the people on the lower levels. But it's not impossible. Which the whole point of something like St. Olga's is to persuade the girls that they have no choice. And they do have a choice. The choice might be dangerous, it might have ugly consequences, it might be very, very, very difficult. But they have a choice to be something other than what society wants them to be. And the disruptive introduction of Marco and Star enables them to realize they have that choice and take that choice and claim their power and topple the system. Which is almost always a good idea. Anytime you encounter something stable and organized, it's probably stagnant, where people are concerned. So, yeah, the episode was interesting from that perspective. The problem is there's a totally other read of the episode that makes it really troubling, which is the school as something that's taking bright, creative, energetic, wild children and turning them into drones. In the context of, mass media often portraying that as being what psychiatric treatment of children does to them. And I have issues with that. I would not, I would be very surprised if no parent ever has taken a child who is just energetic and found a doctor unscrupulous enough to medicate that child into docility so the parent can have an easier time of it. No doubt whatsoever that that is a thing which has happened. But I don't think it's the norm. I say this with some amount of personal experience. Basically, everyone in my family is mentally ill. And medication was a necessity. At one point or another, every single one of myself, my sisters, and my father, at some point or another, have all been institutionalized. Sometimes voluntarily, sometimes not. I was voluntarily institutionalized in 2000. Because I tried to slit my wrists. It's a thing that happened. It was a long time ago. I was a very different person then. Part of why I was a very different person then was because we didn't have medication back then that we have now. Sometimes, it's not about taking a creative child and making them quiet, taking an energetic child and making them lethargic. Sometimes that's an unfortunate side effect. Usually, if that happens, you switch up the medications, find something that works better. It's about solving a problem. It's about, medication is a crutch. And I don't mean that in the usual sense that people say it. What I mean is, medication is a thing you lean on because your legs aren't working. Would you take away a crutch from a person with a broken leg? No, you would not. Some people some people break their leg and they need a crutch for a while. You don't take it away from them, you make sure they get it. Some people might have permanent damage to their leg and need a crutch for the rest of their lives. You don't take it away from them. You don't say, this crutch has altered who they are. No. It's just a thing that helps you keep going. It's an aid that helps you in dealing with a disability. Temporary or otherwise. And there's no difference when it's mental than physical. And it makes me angry and honestly a little bit afraid when people, the media, treats, makes the default assumption that helping a child with a psychiatric condition is some kind of abuse. That it's, squelching them or something. Because, I'd be dead if not for that help. My sisters would be dead or in jail or first one and then the other without that help. it's a thing that's needed sometimes, and it's nothing remotely like Clockwork Orange. So, it bothers me that this is still how these things get depicted. You know, that it's still treated as some kind of, you know, torture or brainwashing or that kind of thing, which just adds to the stigma against these, you know, against mental illness. And there is a real stigma. I, as you may have noticed, hesitated a lot before talking about it. I had come into this video planning to talk about it, but it was still hard to do in the moment. Because I know that someone at some point is going to make a comment about it on this video or another video. Because if you go back to the, you know, there's one video of mine that got linked somewhere or other that gets repeated hate. And I delete and report the worst of the comments, but you can look at what I let through. There's worse that I don't. I'm not saying you should. It's not a fun read. But I know this is going to come up at some point in those, or on this video. And, you know, I'm okay with that. It's nothing I haven't heard before. Believe me, I've been on the internet since before the endless September, endless August, whatever you want to call it. I've been on the internet since before AOL. I've seen everything anybody could possibly say. So, hesitation, but push on through. And yeah, it you know, on the one hand, if we read the school as society trying to shove people, especially girls, into little boxes, then this is great. You tear down that tower. You rip apart that school. But if we read it as, you know, an anti-psychiatric thing, then I've got an issue with it, you know? And it really is kind of open to being read either way. So I kind of leave this episode feeling kind of ambiguous about it. Because I flip back and forth on which way I read it. In one way I really like it, and the other way I don't. It doesn't help that I don't feel like it really needed to be a half hour. Maybe it had a little too much story for an 11-minute episode, but at the same time it didn't have enough jokes for 22. It was a little in that department. So, on the other hand, unless I'm forgetting something, this is the first time they tried to do a 22-minute episode. So maybe they just need a little, you know, little more practice with that. Or they can just go back to doing 11-minute ones, because they seem to have those down pretty well. So yeah. I think that's about it. So, see you all next time. Bye.